We won't waste a cent on her. Dad's voice snapped across the dining hall like a whip, sharp enough to cut through the air. My aunts and uncles froze, forks hovering midair, eyes flicking nervously to me. Mom didn't hold back. There she was, leaning back in her chair with a self-satisfied grin, adding, "Her husband can pay, if he even exists." Awkward laughter erupted around the table. Not true laughter, just nervous applause for a cruel performance. Before we continue, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, your city and country. And once you finish the video, share honestly in the comments what you would do in this situation. We read every single one. Let's dive in. I sat quietly, hands folded in my lap, nails digging into my palms so hard it almost drew blood. My cousin Amy whispered, loud enough for the rest to hear, "Does she even have one? Maybe she made him up." Laughter rippled through the table. I lifted my chin, refusing to let the heat creeping up my neck show on my face. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I offered the tiniest, calm, deliberate smile. That small gesture briefly silenced them. They couldn't understand why someone humiliated wouldn't retaliate. "Good," Dad sneered, mistaking my quiet for surrender. "At least she won't drag us into her mess anymore." But inside, my silence was anything but defeat. It was fire. That night, I lay awake, replaying every sneer, every chuckle, every dismissive glance. I remembered all the years I'd swallowed their ridicule. All the times I was an easy target simply because I stayed quiet, because I didn't flaunt what I had. They assumed silence meant emptiness. Morning arrived too soon. Sunlight streaked across the curtains, and the house was still alive with relatives who'd lingered after the so-called celebration. My father's voice echoed down the hall, bragging about saving money by canceling the useless banquet. My mother's laughter followed, sharp and satisfied. Then 3 crisp honks sliced through the chatter outside. Relatives shuffled to the windows, confusion written on their faces. A sleek black car, polished, luxurious, the kind they'd never think to rent, glided up the driveway. The chauffeur stepped out in a sharp suit, posture rigid and commanding. Gasps ran through the living room. "Who is that?" one uncle asked. The chauffeur ignored them, walking straight past the gawking crowd. His shoes clicked against the marble floor as he approached my grandfather, seated quietly in the corner with his cane. With a slight, respectful bow, he extended a cream-colored envelope sealed in gold. "Mr. Carter," he said smoothly, "this is for you. Personally signed by Mr. Reynolds." The room fell silent. Grandpa adjusted his glasses, hands trembling slightly as he broke the seal. He withdrew a thick invitation, the lettering embossed with elegance. His eyes scanned the page. Then he froze, breath catching. He looked up at me, voice cracking in disbelief. This is from your husband." The room erupted. My mother's smug grin vanished. Dad shot up from his chair, face pale. Cousins swarmed like vultures, desperate to glimpse the contents of the envelope. I remained calm, composed, heart hammering, face unreadable. I met my parents' eyes, their mocking words from the night before still ringing in my ears. "Yes," I said softly but firmly, "from my husband." In that moment, I saw something I'd never seen in them before: fear. The house itself seemed to hold its breath. Grandpa held the embossed invitation in his frail hands, lips moving silently as he reread the words. Every eye in the room fixed on him, but no one dared speak. Finally, his voice broke the silence, steady yet trembling. "This is no ordinary banquet invitation," he said, glancing again at the golden lettering. "It's from the Reynolds estate, signed by your husband, Alexandra." The weight of his words drained the smugness from the room. My mother's hand froze midair, glass of juice untouched. Dad cleared his throat, trying to hide his sudden unease. "Reynolds," he scoffed, voice cracking. "There are plenty of Reynolds out there. Could be anyone." But Grandpa shook his head firmly. "No, not just anyone. The Reynolds family is among the most influential in the state. Old money, old power." His eyes shifted to me, sharp and piercing. "Then you've all made a terrible mistake." Murmurs spread like wildfire across the room. Dad made one last attempt, but it was futile. My cousins whispered urgently among themselves. Aunt Linda fanned herself as though the air had turned stifling, and my uncle muttered, "Impossible. She couldn't have." I rose slowly, letting my chair scrape deliberately across the marble floor. The sound sharp and pointed. My heart raced, yet my face remained calm, unreadable. You wanted proof, I said, my voice steady. Here it is. Mom's voice faltered, the air of superiority replaced by a frantic edge. Stop pretending, Alexandra. A printed card with a fancy seal proves nothing. Anyone could have made that. She turned sharply to Grandpa. Dad, don't fall for this. The chauffeur, still standing perfectly poised near the doorway, raised an eyebrow. Without a word, he pulled out his phone, dialed a number, and put it on speaker. A crisp male voice answered almost instantly. Mr. Reynolds's office, it said. The chauffeur spoke clearly, each word deliberate. This is Daniel, confirming delivery of the invitation to Miss Alexandra Carter's family. There was a pause. Then the voice responded, confirmed. Mr. Reynolds personally requested it be delivered this morning. He'll see you all at the estate this evening. The call ended. The silence afterward was overwhelming. Dad staggered back, as if struck, his face drained of color, arrogance giving way to panic. His voice was barely a whisper. Amy, the cousin who had mocked me most harshly, swallowed hard, her face pale. Wait. Are we supposed to go there? My eyes met hers, calm but piercing. You weren't invited. My husband signed it for me and Grandpa. The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. Grandpa's brows furrowed, his cane tapping against the floor as he stared at me intently. Why only me, he asked. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so it carried weight rather than volume. Because you've always been the only one who never mocked me when the others did. He respects loyalty. Grandpa's lips pressed into a thin line, pride flickering in his tired eyes. Around us, the family murmurs grew frantic, like flies buzzing over a wound. Mom suddenly slammed her glass down, making the table rattle. Enough of this nonsense. If this man of yours truly has power, why hide it? Why not flaunt it sooner? Her words stung, but not in the way she intended. I turned to her, calm yet edged with steel. Because unlike you, Mother, I don't measure my worth by showing off wealth. I wanted a family who loved me for who I am, not what I have. But it's clear now, you were never that family. The truth hit harder than any slap. Her face went slack and Dad sputtered like a man drowning. You think you can speak to us this way just because some man signed a piece of paper? No, I said coldly, eyes locked on his. I can speak this way because you humiliated me at my own banquet. You mocked me. You told people I didn't matter. And now, the very man you dismissed as imaginary has given you far more reason to fear him than you'll admit. The chauffeur spoke again, his tone professional but carrying an edge that brooked no argument. Miss Alexandra, the car is ready. Mr. Reynolds instructed me to bring you and Mr. Carter only. His gaze swept the room, unshaken by the desperate, wide-eyed stares around him. Mom lunged, grabbing my wrist. Her nails dug in as her voice shook, no longer mocking but desperate. Alexandra, please, you can't shut us out. We're family. I slowly freed my wrist, looking her squarely in the eye. Family doesn't laugh while tearing you down. Family doesn't cancel your happiness to save face. Whatever you were, you lost that title the moment you chose pride over me. Grandpa rose with surprising strength, cane thudding against marble. She's right, he declared, his voice weighted with decades of authority, silencing the room. And if what we see is true, then she's the only one here worth standing beside. Mom's voice cracked under pressure. You'll regret this. Men like him, like Reynolds, they'll take what they want and vanish. I met his gaze, steady, unwavering, maybe. But unlike you, at least he doesn't cloak his cruelty behind the word father. The chauffeur gestured toward the exit. Shall we, Miss Alexandra? I nodded and turned toward the door. My heels clicked across the floor, each step reverberating through the hall, like a final sentence. Grandpa walked beside me, his head held higher than I had seen in years. Behind us, Mom's voice finally broke, trembling with fear. What if she's telling the truth? What if he really is? She didn't finish the thought. She didn't need to. The silence that followed said enough. Deep down, they all knew this wasn't a game. This was only the beginning. The ride to the Reynolds estate was quiet, save for the gentle hum of the engine. Grandpa sat next to me in the back, his weathered hands clutching the invitation as if it were a lifeline. His eyes darted to mine every few minutes, full of questions he hadn't voiced. Finally, as the cityscape gave way to rolling countryside, he spoke. "Why didn't you tell me sooner, Alexandra?" His tone held no anger, only a weighty heaviness, the sound of years of regret carried in a single sentence. I stared at my reflection in the tinted window, pale and fragile against the glass. "Because I wanted someone to trust me without needing proof," I murmured. "And you did. That's why you're here with me now." He nodded slowly, lips tightening. For the first time, I saw pride instead of pity in his gaze. The car turned onto a long private drive lined with lanterns, leading to a mansion that resembled a palace. White stone gleamed against the early evening sky. Fountains arched water high into the air, and perfectly manicured gardens stretched as far as the eye could see. Grandpa's cane tapped nervously against the leather seat. When the chauffeur opened the door, a line of staff in black uniforms stood poised, bowing slightly as I stepped out. My stomach twisted, but I kept my posture straight. "Mrs. Reynolds," one greeted, voice respectful. The words hit Grandpa like thunder. He looked at me, eyes wide. "So it's true," he whispered. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. Inside, the grand hall sparkled with chandeliers that glittered like 1,000 stars. Marble floors reflected our every step, as though we were walking on water. Every detail whispered wealth, but none of it mattered as much as the man at the far end of the hall. Ethan Reynolds, my husband. He wasn't in a tuxedo, just a tailored dark suit, crisp, commanding. His presence filled the room before he spoke. His jaw tightened as his eyes met mine, softening in a way no one else ever witnessed. "You're here," he said simply, steady yet warm. I nodded, throat tight. For a moment, the world faded. The sneers, the humiliation, the laughter. None of it mattered in his gaze. Grandpa leaned heavily on his cane, whispering, "You married him?" His disbelief was awe, not contempt. Ethan crossed the hall in long, confident strides, his hand brushing mine, grounding me. "Yes," he said firmly, speaking for me. "And I intend to make sure no one ever questions her worth again." Before I could reply, a staff member approached, phone in hand, whispering urgently. Ethan listened, his expression darkening. He turned to me, jaw sharp. "They're outside," he said. My chest tightened. "Who?" He glanced toward the doors where faint voices carried even through thick walls. "Your parents, and the rest of them." Grandpa's head snapped toward me, disbelief etched across his features. "They followed us." Ethan's lips curved into a blend of smirk and promise. "They won't get far without an invitation." We stepped toward the massive glass doors, and there they were. My parents, my aunts, my cousins, all pressed against the gates, shouting, waving, desperation etched into every line of their faces. A stark contrast to the smug superiority they had worn the night before. Security held them back, professional and unmoving, but their voices drifted faintly on the wind. "We're family. Let us in." I froze, breath caught in my throat. Part of me wanted to turn away. Part of me wanted them to feel every ounce of the pain they'd made me endure. But Ethan bent down, his voice low, meant only for me. "The choice is yours. Do they stay outside or do they come in?" My hands shook at my sides. For the first time, the power wasn't theirs, it was mine. Grandpa looked at me steadily, eyes unwavering. "Whatever you decide, Alexandra, make sure it's for you, not for them." I stared through the glass at the family who had ridiculed me, canceled my banquet, laughed at my silence, and now, stripped of their arrogance, they were pleading for a seat at the very table they once denied me. The decision would define everything, and I knew the moment I spoke, they would never forget my choice. The shouting outside rose, echoing across the estate gates like beggars clamoring at a palace door. My mother's frantic voice pierced through. "Alexandra, we're your family. Don't do this." For years, those words, "we're your family," had been twisted ropes used to bind me, to silence me, to remind me of my place beneath them. But now, standing behind reinforced glass, Ethan's hand resting protectively at the small of my back, the words sounded hollow. Ethan leaned closer, his tone a quiet, commanding current. "Say it and they're gone." My chest rose and fell, the weight of choice pressing down. Grandpa, steady on his cane, watched without blinking. No interference. No pleading. He understood this wasn't his to decide, it was mine. I stepped forward, my heels clicking across the marble, stopping at the threshold. The guards parted the doors just enough for my voice to carry. My parents' faces snapped toward me, relief flooding them as if they truly expected I would rescue them from humiliation. I let the silence linger, eyes scanning each familiar face. My mother, trembling but holding her posture. My father, jaw tight in defiance, masking fear. My cousins, wide-eyed, whispering among themselves. Finally, I spoke. Calm, cold, unwavering. Last night, you canceled my banquet. You mocked me. You laughed at my silence. And now you stand here, begging to enter the very life you once dismissed. Dad twitched. We didn't mean it that way. You know how families joke. I cut him off, sharp and resolute. That wasn't a joke. That was cruelty. And you savored every moment. Mom's facade cracked, her voice trembling as tears formed. Please, Alexandra, don't shut us out. We made a mistake. But we're still your parents. The word parents cut deep, but I didn't flinch. Parents protect. Parents don't strip their child of dignity in front of a room of relatives. You stopped being my parents the moment you decided my worth was a burden. Gasps ran through my cousins, but no one dared defend them. Grandpa's voice rang behind me, calm and firm. She owes you nothing. Ethan stepped forward, imposing, voice sharp as a blade. This estate honors loyalty, not mockery. Respect, not greed. Alexandra decides who enters. I glanced at Ethan. No pressure, just patience. And then clarity hit. I remembered my mother's smirk, the way my father raised his glass when he canceled my banquet as if he'd won some cruel game. Amy's sneer, the whispers, the laughter, they had thrived on my humiliation. Now it was their turn to experience it. I straightened, my words cutting through the air. Guards, close the gates. The command fell like a hammer. My family's faces shattered. Mom stumbled forward, nearly collapsing. Dad's face twisted in rage, shouting until the heavy gates clanged shut in their faces. Final. Irrevocable. Grandpa exhaled, a mixture of pride and sorrow in his eyes. You did what they forced you to do. They made their bed, now they lie in it. I turned to him, my voice softening for the first time. I didn't crave revenge, I wanted respect. But sometimes the only way to claim it is to refuse people the chance to break you. Ethan squeezed my hand gently, his voice carrying judgment and finality. Tonight, Alexandra is no longer the girl they mocked. She is my wife, and she will never be silenced again. As the doors closed behind us, cutting off the noise outside, a calm settled in my chest. For the first time in years, I wasn't the quiet shadow at the table. I was in control. And this